Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. Our series Interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure you will agree that he deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes Joel Gardner. He is the president of the Jefferson Council, a special organization at the University of Virginia. Joel is a graduate of UVA twice with his BA and then his law degree. In full disclosure, I also hold 2 degrees from UVA. While at UVA, he distinguished himself by being part of organizations like Phi Beta Kappa, Z Society, and the Raven Society. After a stint in the Army, he enrolled in law school where he was an editor of the Law Review and a member of the The Order of the Coif, a truly distinguished record. After law school, he initially practiced law with a major Wall Street law firm, then segged into investment banking, where he spent the next 30 years as a corporate finance banker specializing in transactions with the Pacific Basin. However, Joel never truly left the university. He has served on 4 university boards, including being a founding member of the Rotunda Society Board. He's chaired more than a half dozen fundraising efforts, most recently served on the university's Committee on Free Expression and Free Inquiry. He's been a UVA parent twice and is the author of From Rebel Yell to Revolution, which tells the story of the momentous 4 years from 1966 to 1970 while he was an undergrad at UVA. In another interesting parallel, I'm currently working on a book called A Cheap Education about my 4 years in college at a very different school, 1969, 1973. He's traveled around the country giving book talks to numerous UVA alumni clubs. He also published a number of articles dealing with UVA for the James G. Martin Center for Academic Renewal. Joel is actively involved in the creation of the Jefferson Council, served on its first executive committee, and he's now returned as new role as president of the Jefferson Council. Hey, we had to shorten his bio so we'd have time for the interview itself. We welcome Joel Gardner for his first appearance on Saving America.
Thanks, David. Really great to meet you.
Well, we're so looking forward to having you join us today. As you know, we ask our guests 3 broad questions. The first is, of all the universities in America, why would it be important to focus on free speech at the University of Virginia?
Well, UVA is really a unique institution, and we can start off with the fact that it has its 2 founders, not only presidents of the United States and founding fathers, but also authors of 2 of the most revered documents in Western civilization. Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence, and James Madison, the author of the Bill of Rights and the First Amendment. And because of that incredible unique situation, I think most UVA graduates over the years has looked back to those 2 founders as people to emulate. Current history has reversed some of that, as these 2 incredible minds have been judged by the mores of current society rather than the time they lived. But when Jefferson founded the university, and he was the main founder, it was his child, one of the things he said, at this institution, we will not be afraid to follow the truth wherever it may lead. And that is something that was always part and parcel, I think, of our education at UVA. And the other unique aspects of the university, like its grounds, which they call it instead of the campus.
That's right.
Designed by Jefferson and are the only UNESCO World Heritage Site in North America. Things like that bind us. And UVA has always had a very, very strong feeling of camaraderie amongst its students and of and a very, very strong cultural bond amongst the students. That cultural bond has been, in my opinion, shredded over the past decade, and we can get into that. But the First Amendment is key, and the Jeffersonian legacy of civil debate is part and parcel of UVA. So I think we are a unique institution, and our legacy is freedom of expression. I don't think there's any other university that can match that.
Absolutely. And so what has happened to free speech on so many university campuses, including UVA? Why is it so critical to turn that around now, to face it right now?
I think it's not difficult to pinpoint it. And it really all comes back to the politicization of our college campuses. I mean, for I think most of the history of higher education, the foremost purpose was education, starting probably more than a decade ago. And it started well before, but it really picked up speed in the mid 2000s and really became the most important part of the academia after around 2010 was indoctrination. And it was indoctrination in a social justice policies and an agenda. And I think people now will put a term on it, and it really was the DEI movement, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I wrote an article about it 3 or 4 years ago. It's been in the press a lot recently. I think I called that out a lot earlier. I wasn't the first one. There's a brilliant article by the former dean of the Yale Law School, Dean Kronman, called The Downsides of Diversity. It was published in the Wall Street Journal. And basically, I mean, there's a lot in there, but one of the major points he made is that DEI, as applied on college campuses, is not an academic ideal, but a political movement. And that's exactly what it was. And what makes it most troublesome is that the concept of DEI is not what those words mean. Diversity,
True. Absolutely.
and inclusion. Diversity means diversity of many things, but not the most important diversity, which is diversity of thought. That has been given total short shrift on college campuses. You can read the works of Jonathan Haidt, who is a prior professor at UVA, is now up at NYU. But there was very little diversity of thought amongst in academia, amongst both the administrations and the faculty. Equity means equality of and final, I'd cut for a second, but it's equality of result and not equality of opportunity.
Absolutely.
And inclusion has meant just the opposite. Inclusion has not meant the inclusion of all groups. It's meant the inclusion of certain groups which are deemed to be marginalized and which, in fact, today run the universities both at a faculty, administrative, and student level. But it's not been inclusion, and it's not been inclusivity. And I've seen it very much at UVA, where we had such a close bond, where there was a great community amongst faculty, students, administrators. It really was an amazing place. And now it's divided. It's been fractured, and it's divided by identity groups. And it's broken my heart to see that, because I think, as you kind of detailed in my biography, UVA has been in my heart and soul since I stepped on the grounds in 1966, never truly left it. And it's really terrible to see what's become of the community, the sense of community and camaraderie there.
Well, it's interesting for us, and my approach here in Saving America, because we interviewed a fantastic young lady. She happens to be up in a college in Maryland. She's a senior now. She was an intern for the Heritage Society this summer, and I happened across her because she wrote a brilliant article. I had no idea it was written by a college junior. And I interviewed her. She's Asian American, and she was so critical of DEI. She said, I want to be respected for who I am and my accomplishments and my intellectual ability. I don't want to be considered something because I'm Asian or female. And she just gave such a compelling presentation on where DEI has failed, but not just I think academia, but our society in general. So anyway, so we've been on this streak for a while, and we've interviewed two different professors on this same subject. We interviewed a professor who was fired from a university in Bakersfield, California, because he spoke out for conservative causes. And before he was fired, by the way, I got a chance to go out and speak on that campus. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then I just interviewed Amy Wax, who you may have crossed her name. Is
and
yeah, and it's so interesting because I'm a Penn alum, and she was incredibly penalized. If she didn't have tenure, she'd be out on the street. But they have done some rather incredible things to her for being critical of DEI while being a professor at Penn. So it is interesting to see how things are going. So our third question is, what is the purpose of the Jefferson Council, and how has its work to date improved the matter of free speech at UVA, and what more needs to be done in this regard?
Okay. Jefferson Council was formed over 3 years ago by a group of alumni who saw what was going on at the university and was very concerned. I think anybody who was focused on life at the university and had an interest, whether you were an alum or a faculty member or a parent, I could see that there was what I would call a free speech suppression. And this, it wasn't suppression by fiat, it was suppression de facto. And that suppression was, if you did not agree with the agenda that was being propagated virtually on a daily basis on the grounds, you were going to be marginalized and you were going to be attacked on social media, and students were afraid to speak up in class. And just to show that that's, I think, what a lot of us were seeing, but that was in essence, there was not intellectual diversity. There was a fear of people from moderate conservative to more strongly conservative speaking up on the grounds. And the group saw that, as well as attacks on our founder, Thomas Jefferson, who's known as Mr. Jefferson in Charlottesville and on the grounds. But, you know, we all recognize he, like no other human, was a perfect human being, that his contributions, not only to our university, but to our nation and Western civilization, far exceeded, you know, his, what in today's world is considered, you know, and should be considered to be failings in terms of the social contract. But it wasn't in his day. And as I said, you know, his contributions far surpassed that. And he was revered on grounds. And I think a lot of the attacks on the Jeffersonian legacy, not only him as a person, but his, what I've mentioned before, his mandate that the truth be followed, no matter where it may lead. That just wasn't the case anymore. The truth wasn't being followed, the agenda was being followed. And so these alumni got together. We had a number of pillars. I mean, free expression and diversity of thought was one. The Jeffersonian legacy was another. The integrity of the Jefferson grounds was another, which is, of course, distinct to UVA. And the fourth was our honor system, which was a revered
Yes.
part of tens of thousands of UVA graduates for over a century, and which was in the process and has continued to be eviscerated to an extent that it's barely recognizable to what it was. But I think if you asked what most students remember from their time at UVA, it was the concept of honor and the importance of being an honorable person. More important than wealth, more important than success was being a person of honor and integrity. And that was imbued in us back then. And it was not even slowly, it was quickly being frittered away. So that was another one of our mandates. But those were sort of the founding principles. As time went on, we grew in numbers. We've got over 3,000 members today, people concerned about the university. And I think we've played an amazing role in helping to foster intellectual diversity and freedom of speech. And we've done that in a number of ways. First, we brought many speakers, well-known speakers, moderate, conservative speakers on grounds. We had Vice President Pence. We had George Will. We've had academic speakers like Heather McDonald. And I think we brought people to the grounds that never would have been here if it wasn't for us. Secondly, and I think very, very importantly, is we have focused granularly on events on the grounds and have shined the light of day on them and have educated the university community to how freedom of expression and fairness to all students has been abused. And I think that would have gone uncommented on if we hadn't been out there willing to hear from students and faculty members about what was going on. They felt comfortable speaking to us, and we brought that to the public. And I think that's had a lot of consequence. I can tell you the formation of the free speech committee that I served on was very much in response to some of the writings I did to the public. At that time, interestingly, I had also said the university should adopt the Calvin Committee principles on the university not taking institutional views on political and social matters. That was deep-sixed by the powers that be at the time. And now just recently, they suddenly discovered how important that is, not to be commenting on public affairs because they came under quite a lot of scrutiny and bad publicity.
Yes.
But I think perhaps those were two ways in which I think we have fostered trying to have a level playing field for the free expression on grounds, is that we've had the back of individual students, student groups, and faculty, and I think have given them the courage and the comfort for them to come out and speak, knowing we are there to back them up, when before, in many ways, they would have been criticized and in certain ways had, because it's true, had actions taken against them. I mean, there's certain individual students in the stories. I mean, I could go on for the next half hour talking about how individual students have been mistreated in abominable ways by the administration in that regard. And it's important for people to know, because any parent that would learn of some of that stuff, and most alumni that would learn of that, would be horrified. And I think part of the problem is that most alumni are not aware of what is going on. The administration tells its story. They tell a wonderful story. They have multi-million-dollar PR departments behind them. And most people hear certain things that come out in the university official statements and take that as fact. and don't understand that what's going on. And just as it happens today, I think it was last night or very recently on the Joe Scarborough show, and he's not a particularly conservative commentator. His daughter goes to UVA.
Oh,
And
interesting.
he came out with a comment saying how terrible that his daughter came home and basically said that if you come out and speak openly against what is the common agenda there, the common adopted thought, that you're marginalized, you're attacked, and as a result, students just basically sit in class and are afraid to speak up. That just came out. You can find that online. But that's the truth, and people don't understand it. It's denied by the administration, because if you believe what they say and the positions they take, you'd never know it. But they talk the talk and they don't walk the walk, which is why an organization like the Jefferson Council is so important, not only to the University of Virginia, it's important to universities across the country. And you know, now there are many, many groups similar to UVA. There's a group called AFSA, which I think now is 26, 27 similar groups to the Jefferson Council around the country, we were one of the founding members, 5 or 6 founding members, and they're around the country. But it is a problem. I mean, this is a definite problem, not only at universities, this is K through 12. If you go,
yes, absolutely.
their
And of course,
indoctrination has replaced education as the ground stone of education.
and it's killing us, and it's really been so difficult. I'm university professor, as I think you know, and I have seen a dramatic decline in the quality of our students coming into our colleges, and we have lost the focus in K through 12 of very basic skills, is reading, writing, and arithmetic. And I know it sounds so, 18th century to talk about the 3 R's, but I've got a student who's a sophomore in college, supposed to write a paper on philosophy. It came by one of the committees I serve on, and he didn't know how to write a paper, did not know how to write a research paper. And this is someone who's in a private college where I teach, and it's like, what happened? What are we doing over there? These should not be political inculcation centers. And even if you are a political inculcation center, at least teach them how to read and write, and how to, put sentences and paragraphs and things together. That's why I was so impressed with our visitor from the Heritage Society, the summer intern, because her writing was clear and positive. She was a great speaker, and it's like, where are the rest of these college students today? And I would say UVA, where I taught while I was working on my doctorate in the early 2000s at the McIntire School of Business, I can tell you it was a very good experience for me, because the students were articulate and on top of things. But I know things since that was about the year 2003. I know things have declined since then on the campus because of this extreme pressure towards DEI.
Well, Dave, it's not only that, it's not only the failure to inculcate the basics into our students, like being able to write in a manner in which people can understand, put
Yes.
more than 2 or 3 sentences together. They don't teach history anymore. I mean, there was a history requirement when I was an undergrad. There's no history.
Sure.
A lot of people graduate having no knowledge of our own American system, of our own American history. Forget about world history or Western civilization is now a horrible concept, to many of the people with the agenda. I mean, it's just terrible. I mean, the fact that I'm the son of an immigrant who escaped the czar at the turn of the last century, came over here, grew up in extreme poverty on the Lower East Side. I mean, to live in a society that has created more freedom and more wealth than any society in the history of the world is a blessing. And it's something that every student should understand. Without this country, without America, without our history, without our traditions, without our freedoms, there are tens of millions of people who would have suffered horrible existences. Hundreds of millions, probably. And I
Yes,
think that
I think
just
hundreds
doesn't
of
come
millions is
across.
very safe, and we've developed so much. And Joel, we could do this for hours, of course, but why don't we conclude with how can our audience get more information about you and about the work of the Jefferson Council?
I think they could, if they really want to know about me, they can read my book because they'll know
Good.
more than they ever need to. But that book really is a commentary on the other period in our recent history, which was somewhat similar to what is going on today, was during the Vietnam War.
Yes.
And our society was first coming under attack and where the norms were totally under siege. But that was a period when the world turned upside down and went 180 degrees in about 3 years. They can read my articles at the James Martin Center. Could just go online, Google James Martin Center for Academic and Renewal, and read my articles about the politicization of the college campuses and what I call the new McCarthyism at the University of Virginia. The Jefferson Council, I would say just go to our website and just Google the Jefferson Council UVA, and you will find on our website, you can join up, and right there, we publish news stories all the time. We publish stories about what's going on at UVA. You can read a lot of these stories about what's going on around academia and the campus reform and the college fix, which are broad and around the nation. But if you really want to know a granular basis, what's going on at Mr. Jefferson's University, the foundation of the American ideals, and following the truth wherever it may lead, you should be reading, sign up and read the Jefferson Council, our blogs on a regular basis. And certainly would love to have people who are interested, who want to see our founders' dreams come true at the university that they started. We are a public university. We're not an elite private university. We have students from all spheres, from all states. Jefferson wanted his university, although a state university, to be representative of the United States. It's a wonderful place. It's a unique institution, and I would certainly hope that those listening would support us in our efforts to really create that level playing field for the free and civil exchange of ideas, which is what a university should be about and what Mr. Jefferson dreamed of.
Sounds good to me, Joel Gardner. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America. Thanks for joining us, and please subscribe on your favorite platform.